Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. This is just a quick update and an answering a question that old McDonald had. First, I've ordered the parts for the fan, the furnace fan that quit on me. These bearings I ordered through eBay. They're different than the ones that are in it. The ones that are in it are just plain bearings. In other words, they're sintered bronze inside of a steel ring, and they sit inside a rubber bushing that lets you self-align the bearings inside the housing of the fan. The fan housing has the bearing mounts spot welded onto it. It's an inexpensive fan, inexpensive furnace at the time. Made in 1962 though, so inexpensive in 1962 is built like 10 times better than what it is today for inexpensive. It would probably have plastic bearings and some kind of a plastic flywheel inside, fan wheel inside. So I'm more than happy to work on this one. It's going to last a while. I ordered these bearings off eBay. They were 17 bucks a piece, which fair amount for a bearing, but not too bad. The nice thing I like about them is, rather than being plain bearings, these are ball bearings. So they're lifetime ball bearings, and lifetime is always a relative word. Usually they consider lifetime to be about 10 years. But ball bearings with grease in them, and especially in something like a fan that doesn't get a lot of shock load, bearings will last a long, long time. The plain bearings that were in it lasted, well, if it was installed in 1962, I'm sure those are the original bearings. And that would make it, 40 plus 20 would be 60 years old. So if plain bearings will last 60 years, I'm sure these ball bearings are going to go a lot longer. I'll probably never see any work on this one again. The ball bearings are just a standard ball bearing, but rather than having a pillow block, these go inside this little rubber sleeve. And the rubber sleeve allows me to shove it inside the steel bearing housing, and it'll squish in there. And then, because this is a cam lock bearing, there's a cam on the inner race and a cam inside this locking collar. So you slide the bearing on the shaft, then you slide the locking collar on, and they go over like this, and then you rotate this until the two cams coincide, and it jams onto the shaft. Then you tighten up the two set screws, the bearing's on there. It's nice because it locks the bearing in the housing. The plain bearings had a little snap ring on them to keep them aligned, and the snap ring runs against the sintered bronze bearing and wears it out. And the snap ring wore off on the back side of it. One of the problems with the shaft coming loose. So the fan wheel right now is allowed to slide back and forth. Also, because it didn't pull the fan wheel out and tighten up the set screw on the fan wheel is not fully engaged on the shaft. It's still working, but we're going to get these bearings in and it'll be a lot better. I went to buy a new pulley because the pulley on the shaft was what the original noise problem was, and also because the pulley was spinning on the shaft. The fan wheel was turning, but it took a few seconds to come up to speed. Made horrible noise in the meantime. That's what made me aware that there was a problem. So I went on eBay to order a fan wheel, a fan pulley, and I first looked up furnace pulleys. And furnace pulleys were $124. Yeah, $124 for a little die-cast 7-inch diameter, 3/4 inch bushing die-cast pulley. It's what, $3 worth of aluminum, and it's die-cast, so it's punched out of a die-cast machine about as fast as you can pop the aluminum into it and out of it. So I'd say maybe a 1-minute cycle time, all total, and it comes out done. All they have to do is tap the set screw hole. So that's really highway robbery. So I just went looking for a 7-inch pulley to go on a 3/4 inch shaft. Lo and behold, there's a thing called an evaporative cooler. It looks exactly like the pulley on the fan on my furnace. Yeah, it's a squirrel cage fan with a 7-inch diameter pulley on it. Same thing as a furnace pulley. The only difference is it doesn't have furnace in the name. Evidently, furnace has got some kind of a cachet, I guess would be one of the words. It makes it, well, 10 times the price. I could buy one for $14 on eBay, but it was $5 shipping. I can get one through Home Depot in Plainwell for $17, but it's free shipping. I just got to go to Plainwell and pick it up. So I have one ordered. Should be here sometime around the 31st, in which case I'll pull the fan and we'll have a day where I do the fan repair and show you what I do. So that's the fan. That's the furnace, and that's the update on that. Also, I'm feeling well enough that I can get in there and take that fan out without being worried about anything. I'm over the dizziness. I've got the PIC lines all taken care of. I'm no longer on IVs, and I'm doing quite well. I actually drove to town yesterday. Had somebody watching me the whole time, making sure nothing happened, but it worked out well. So, now, on to the question that I was asked. Old McDonald, old McDonald had a farm, and old McDonald's got a problem with a 2-man crosscut saw. What he wanted to know was, he said, he looked at my video on how to make a jointer for a handsaw, and he asked if there was a way to make a jointer for a curved saw. They call it breasted. And yes, these little doohickeys here are a a saw jointer. Now I have several. This is a Adkins, Atkins, and because it's got a name cast in it and it's a little fancier, this one I listed at $40. Nobody bought it, but I don't need to sell it, so if somebody wants to give me $40 for it, they're more than welcome to have it. And that's where old McDonald said, you know, everybody wants $40 for a jointer, for a curved breasted saw. And he asked me if there was a way to make one. Well, sure there is. The way this works, there are 2 little stops on the saw jointer. The file slips underneath those 2 little stops, and then you take a screwdriver and tighten it up, and it locks the file in. Now if you just lock it in there, that's file's not bent, it's just straight, and you can use it to file, you know, to joint any regular saw, any straight saw. But I'm going to turn this around so I can work right-handed. If you take and tighten the screw up, it bends the file. And what that does, this is a 1-man crosscut saw, but it has the same kind of breasting that a 2-man saw does. When you bend that saw blade, now the file follows the curve of the saw, and the curve should be consistent. If your saw doesn't have a consistent curve, then it's probably been hand sharpened by somebody that did the best they could but didn't do it right. So how do you go about making one of these? Well, you could take a flat piece of steel, just a plain old flat piece of steel, something about a 1/4 inch thick. You want to have some meat to it. You don't want to have it flexing on you. 1/4 inch, 3/16 would be minimum, I think. This is cast iron. Cast iron is very rigid and doesn't bend on you. Couldn't use anything like sheet metal. Sheet metal would just flex. You need to have 2 stops here and something to lock that screw in to push it up into there. So if you ran a couple of 1/4 inch bolts through the 1/4 inch plate, You'd either tap the holes and push them in through the back so the head didn't interfere, or you could use a nut and fasten it on there any way you want to do it. As long as you have, since we're talking a 1/4 inch bolt, the 1/4 inch bolt wants to stick through about a 1/2 inch. Maybe 1/4 inch if you can do it that way. Then you need to have a place for the little screw down here to go through. Now, a couple things you can do. If you got a welder, wonderful. You can weld a little 1/4-20 nut on the bottom of on the middle of the thing so that you can run a 1/4 inch screw up in there. This is a number 8 screw, and you can run a number 8 nut on there and tack that onto the 1/4 inch plate and use that to hold the screw to drive up in. It doesn't take much. You saw how hard I had to work to bend this thing. Bending a file in one of these is actually pretty simple. Just takes a couple of fingers on the screwdriver. So you don't have to have something hugely strong. So a couple of 1/4 inch bolts on a 6-inch piece of 1/4 inch plate, a number 8 screw with a nut. Then that'll let you run a screw up against the bottom of the file and bend the file so that you can make a saw joiner for a curved saw. It's not that much curve. You don't have to bend that file too far. You don't want to take it too far. You'll snap it. Files are very hard. They're springy, but you'll snap them. So anyways, that's how I would go about making one if I didn't have one. But since I have 4, I probably never will make one. Old McDonald, I hope that answers your question, and we'll see how things go for you. Let us know, and thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all.